I've just been reading Malcolm Gladwell's book, Blink. I'm probably the last person on the planet to read it, judging by the amount of sales it's had. And it's a journalistic account, or a journalistic review of a bunch of research in different areas, all of which supports the idea of intuition, and particularly the sort of intuition which allows one to make snap decisions and very, very quick judgment calls based on very small amounts of evidence. One of the things that comes through with that is that this ability to make good decisions, not just any old decisions, but good decisions, isn't just something that comes out of the blue. It's informed by repeated exposure to the circumstances in which such decisions are usually made. So it requires one to be something of an expert, or to have a lot of experience in the field before one is able to make such snap decisions. So, for example, he gives an account of a Greek statue or something like that, I think there's a kouros, which, according to various analytic processes, is genuine. A number of art experts just at first glance at this particular statue get an immediate bad feeling off it, which makes them think it's probably a fake, and subsequently it is, sure enough, revealed as a fake. The assumption is that that's this first impression that they get, in which they intuitively detect something wrong, even though they can't put that wrongness into words necessarily, at least not immediately. What's happening there is that their experience in looking at statues, looking at the real thing over and over again, having lots and lots of highly motivated, highly embodied relationship to the real thing, aesthetic relationships to real statues, authentic statues, has kind of prepared them for, has tuned their feelings, if you like, tuned their emotional responses, such that when they see a statue that is superficially similar, and perhaps even analytically similar in some ways, that those honed emotional responses will send out a warning signal, which they'll experience as just a sense of not rightness, which they may have difficulty justifying, but nevertheless is often correct, according to the thesis of the book. Another example that they give, which I think is a really interesting one, is when he talks about, it's anecdotal, this account. I haven't found any research to support it, but it's this idea that during the Second World War, people who were telegraph operators, sending Morse with an old-fashioned key, if they were intercepting signals for a long time and listening to these signals for a long time, they would gradually be able to identify the operator. Even though notionally Morse signals and the key presses in Morse signals are supposed to be the same length, the dot is supposed to be a certain length and the dash is supposed to be a certain length, there are in fact small modulations that take place which vary from one person to another, and those become readable. That's kind of like the accent or the dialect or the signature, if you like, of the person making the transmission. And in Blink, it's reported that this is actually valuable information, or during the Second World War, being able to identify the signature strokes of a telegraph operator was actually useful information, because it would give you information, for example, about how often that person was on duty or whereabouts they were signalling from, so you could get second-hand circumstantial evidence about troop movements and so on, simply by identifying the movements of the operators based on their signature keystroke patterns. So where's this going? What am I thinking about this? Well, for me, there seems to be a relationship between that kind of knowledge, that kind of intuitive awareness, and what I've spoken of a couple of times before, which is Polanyi's idea of focal and subsidiary awareness. In focal and subsidiary awareness, there is the property of the world that one is focally aware of. I'm looking at the three-dimensional tree on the horizon here. Therefore, I am focally aware of that three-dimensional tree. And in Polanyi's terms, that's my focal awareness. But in order to construct that three-dimensional image, I have two-dimensional image, one presented to each eye, and it's the combination of those two images and the slight differences between them that produce the image, that provides the information that allows my brain to see it as three-dimensional, gives me that depth information. And those two-dimensional images, and indeed the differences between those two images, is, in Polanyi's sense, subsidiary information. I don't have access to that. I only have access to the resultant focal information, and that's my focal awareness. So in terms of these Morse operators, those small variations away from the kind of metronomic pressing of the key, which is kind of recommended, the fact that the keystrokes vary slightly and there's a small syncopation in the patterns of the different operators, and each syncopation is slightly different from each other syncopation. The differences between, if you like, the mathematical or metronomic beats and the syncopated beats is enough to provide the information which becomes recognizable as the signature of individual operator. And whilst it may not be, in fact it would be impossible to be aware of those syncopations, very difficult, at the very least, very, very difficult to listen out for and recognize that pattern of difference. That, in that sense, you can only be subsidiarily aware of that pattern of difference. What you can become focally aware of is how that difference is represented in one's body, in one's mind, in one's emotional responses, in one's cognition somehow. And that recognition takes the form of recognition of that difference, recognition of the information contained in those differences, takes the form of a signature, a recognition that this is a certain person pressing a certain key at a certain town in Germany.